So, hello, lovely people. Pleasure, really big pleasure today to have our very special guest who Jackie is going to introduce. It's really lovely to be here with you today, Liz. Tell us about this lovely lady, Jackie.
So we're excited because Liz Nagle is our first guest and she's agreed to be with us today for Lost for Words. And she's given us a lovely bio, which is just beautiful. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Who am I and what do I dedicate myself to? I am Liz Nagle in this lifetime. In truth, I am spirit, a soul incarnate. I am here to serve humanity by living in alignment with my soul's purpose. My task is to remember what that is, and life is always working for me in that respect. Every experience seemed to be conveniently designed to help me see the truth and remember that I am the creator of the reality that I call my life. Unfortunately, it seems that I have chosen to learn about myself through pain and fearful experiences like lack, loss, rejection, and abandonment. But I am so done with that way of being. And now that I have accepted that I am the one who created all of the suffering I'm experienced in my life precisely to get me to this stage of awakening, I am practicing the art of living and learning through freedom and love, with the freedom of being my true self, vibrating at the higher creative frequencies of love and above, where the lower frequencies of fear and lack cannot materialize. My desire is to pass this teaching on by being an example of my being in truth. Wow. That's some bio and gives us a real place to start, I suppose, with introducing you. And I suppose when you hear that read back to you after giving that as a bio, I suppose that's possibly a really good place to start. How does it feel to hear it?
It actually was bringing tears to my eyes because that just flowed out of me this morning. But you know, it resonates with me because there is only me and we are all one. You know, it's that conundrum of yes, it's my reality that I create, and I am responsible for my experience and for everyone who is reflecting me in my experience. So, so yeah, it actually brought tears to my eyes, and it's apparently my bio, but it's everybody's bio. That's what we're all here for. It did occur to me that it makes me sound like I'm this, you know, amazing Buddha type, you know, perfect person. But, you know, obviously I'm not, because look at the world I'm creating. Obviously, I'm practicing and I'm failing. And as I fail, I learn. And failing, you know, in inverted commas, quote unquote. But not to even practice, not to even try is just a waste of this lifetime, you know. And I do get it wrong, obviously, because look at what we're all witnessing in this world. But that's okay. I just keep practicing, keep trying, keep learning, keep failing, and keep growing.
I love that, Liz. It's like we're the best, you know, we're all the best of the human experience and the worst, you know. We're all of that, and it is really a pleasure to have you here today. And you were on my list when I did a short list in my head of people that I would like to bring on to talk about real stories, you know. And Jackie and I have a passion about talking about life and talking about death and talking about dying and talking about everything in between. We've got a passion for pointing people towards the fact that we're designed for dying, we're designed for death, and we're designed, but we don't seem to cope too well with that stuff when it hits us in this human world. And so I think, I've known you for many years now, and I just wondered, would you be happy to share your story about your beloved Brendan, who passed away far too young, it would appear, for us all, and just to get that kind of real life, how that was for you, a little bit of the story, if you're happy to share, and kind of how through the journey that I know that you've been on, what you'd call your awakening journey, wakening up to who you truly are, how you kind of see that now, how the experience was for you at the time, and how it might look for you today. So yeah, we'd love to hear that.
Okay, so my partner of 17 years passed away very, very suddenly, really. I mean, he had been ill, but I wasn't expecting him to die. He wasn't expecting to die. None of us were expecting him to die. And it was overnight, really. And he was only 50 years old. And it was what I now call my near-death experience. And I've had a couple of those in my lifetime. And it was completely devastating for me. And I, just as I was thinking about what we might talk about today, it occurred to me that of course it was my near-death experience, because it was the death of my dreams, my expectations, my life as it was. It was the death of my life. I've actually realized that death only applies to the living. The person that we say has died hasn't in fact died. They haven't gone anywhere. They've just left their body here. But their consciousness, who knows? We don't know, I guess. So the death is only applicable to the ones who are left behind. And that's what's so devastating. It's not, obviously we miss the person who is no longer there to talk to or hold their hand, or, that physical person, body is gone. But it's the death of our dreams. It's the death of our expectations. It's the death of the story that we had written for ourselves, the script. And it's like, if that's gone, who am I? What's the point of me? If I'm not that. And so it's that took, that took a good number of years for me to kind of create a new script, I guess. But I didn't want to create just another story. I found that another story, another version of me just didn't cut it anymore. It's like, I didn't want another, just another book in the series of that Liz Nagle. I something more profound kind of seeped in about the nature of who I am, and the nature of the purpose of a life. And what came in really strongly was that the only thing that matters, in the only point of existence, is connection, is connecting with other souls, is finding that connection to our source consciousness, or to consciousness, and to my own consciousness, and to others' consciousness. And the only way to do that was through that vibration of love, love and above. Because that is the creative force, that is the lowest frequency at which we can create and communicate. Everything else is just on the downward spiral of contraction, and that's a one-way street. You just hit rock bottom. It's a dead end. Contraction is a dead end. The only way to go is up. The only way to create or to live is to be constantly growing and growing and expanding our consciousness. I feel like I'm rambling.
So what I want to just say, because I was so struck by what you've just said, because there was such a kind of rawness to it. It was kind of like like it was as if the kind of the death allowed you to kind of just, I don't know, emerge. I had this vision of kind of like, it sort of there was this nakedness to the whole process, and you sort of emerged as this kind of embryo, sort of like I'm coming back to life kind of thing. I'm reborn. But I'm just really conscious, because I can hear the beauty of that, but there's a pain to that. It's a little bit like anything being reborn or coming or being birthed. There's childbirth that happens in that process, the birthing process. And so it's not that I want to spend a lot of time there, but I just want to talk to people about the bit that happens that allows the growth to happen, because that feels so important, that we acknowledge that, the word devastated was used. I was absolutely devastated, because it's just being in that kind of knowing that pain is acceptable, that it's okay to feel sad, that it's okay to feel those emotions too, but where they've led you is somewhere beautiful. I really just want to explore that a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the pain, physical and emotional, but physical pain in my chest, in my heart. And I thought, how does anybody survive this? How can I survive this? It's unbearable. It was unbearable. It's bringing tears to my eyes, just remembering, lying on the couch, wrapped in a blanket that he'd given me for Christmas. He died at the New Year's weekend, and so I had this lovely, warm, woolly blanket that he'd given me for Christmas, and I was wrapped in that, and I was just, there aren't words. Language just doesn't suffice to explain the pain. And I remember, because my father had died at the age of 9, and so my mother was my age when he died. And I remember thinking, well, she must have gone through this too. How did I not know that? I mean, I knew she was upset, to say the least, but I didn't know the depth of that pain. And then it occurred to me that, people go through this. I had lost Bren, my partner, through illness. But people have lost their whole families in accidents or wars, or, they've lost everything and everyone. And I'm not the first person to be going through this. How did I not know the depth of this pain that so many millions of people go through every second of every day? It was incomprehensible to me that we're not somehow more prepared, because this is a natural cycle of life. how are we not more prepared? How do we not know? And down to the silly things like ringing to change the car insurance and things like that, and they're saying, you know, oh well, we need the account holder to authorize it. Well, he's dead. Well, don't. I'll have to get my supervisor. Even they don't know how to deal with it. I mean, I can't be the first person who's rung up to change the car insurance. It can't be the first person. This happens every day to millions of people. Why is nobody prepared? Not even businesses. Nothing. Except maybe the undertakers. They're about the only ones.
It starts to me to make sense. It starts to make sense then of the fact that when we try to push away this emotion when it comes, you know, we're sort of like this, you know, if it's something that's just not acknowledged, even from a business perspective, then when it comes, it's like, how do I cope with this? And I think what you've started to share so beautifully, or what you are sharing, is that every emotion that happened was welcome. All of it, you know, it was all there. Well, not necessarily welcome, but everything was there and you were living through it. So
yeah, it definitely wasn't welcome.
Yeah.
But what I found was at that depth of pain and suffering, there isn't really a way to escape it, you know. For me anyway, and I think this is probably true, it's like the thinking brain or the ego kind of collapses. Just it is devastated. It dies. It's dead. The death happens to the living, not the other. I haven't come up with another word for them.
I like the way you say that, Liz, though. The experience of the death can only be witnessed by aliveness. So it is so true that, that, you know, and I guess those that are passing, that know they are passing, have their own experience of the death process. So it's again back to that such separate realities, isn't it? In every situation, there's one thing happening, somebody is dying or somebody has died, but if they are still dying, there's all these different versions of the same occurrence, the same story going on and being created moment to moment. And that changes. That changes.
It changes.
I love the way you talked about the sort of the expansion of consciousness. I might talk about that like, you know, high levels of consciousness and the constricted. You know, I always think of that map, the David Hawkins map of consciousness, when I see it like that. But there is something about being in that constricted nature, being, you know, below the line, you know, that it has a momentum of its own that is very speedy. You know, and so when we do spiral quickly, which is what happens when we're in any expression of fear, and when we, you know, before we hit our rock bottom, if you like, before we have our insight of, oh, hold on a moment, you know, what's going on here, and we start to bounce back up again. But that speed at which that constricted, it's like it has a mind of its own. When we're off track, or when we're in our false logic, or when we're caught up in the illusion, or any of that stuff, that we're a separate being, you know, that speed at which that happens. So that depth, it looks like the depth is much deeper down below than up above. It's got it's such a different taste, such a different flavor.
And it of course it's a black hole. It's dark, you know, and so you can't see the bottom. But I think when you're hit with an event that's so traumatic like that, you do hit the bottom, because all of your fears not just the loss of your dreams and your idea of what your life was going to be, but your vulnerability, and that if he can die, well, so can I. I can just disappear just like that, like in a moment. I can be there one moment and gone the next. All of those vulnerabilities comes up. So you really come smack into the wall or the floor. But it's at that point that when there's nowhere else to go, and you think all your life you've been terrified of hitting that wall or that floor, and suddenly you've hit it, and you're still alive, still here. I'm still here. Now what? And suddenly, like, well, that was a bit futile, being afraid of hitting this, and I've hit it and it's painful, but I'm still here. So I went through, and again, just coming back to my own experience, I went through a couple of years of, I call them my zombie years, because I was kind of fearless. It's not like, and I was only thinking with my heart brain, not my head brain. I just followed my heart because my head just wasn't working. The head hadn't prepared me for this devastation, so it wasn't going to be able to get me out of it. So I just literally followed what made me feel expansive and avoided anything that made me contract. And that was my guiding principle. And, you know, it really worked so well. I traveled around the world. I moved from Ireland to Spain. And everything just happened so smoothly in the flow, like nothing bad or nothing went wrong. There was no, I don't know if things went wrong actually, because I wasn't aware of them. It just went, I don't care, you know, because I've survived the worst. Nothing can scare me now. And after that, then little bits of fear started to creep in, but I have to be, so I don't want to live like that anymore. I'm you know, now I'm conscious enough to choose. As I said, I'm choosing not to live from fear and lack. I'm choosing, I am practicing choosing to live from, you know, and learn from love and expansion, and leaving the contraction and lower frequencies behind.
Thank you, Liz, for sharing that so openly. And there's something that popped into my head, which is, it's almost like when it looks like we've lost everything, there's nothing more to lose. So it's a bit like, you know, playing with the house's money, right? It's like, you know, it's just, it's like there's nothing to lose. It's like it seems to be. There's something, I hear that again and again, you know, I hear that again and again. Right? It's like it's just yeah, your biggest fears have been, you know, even if we didn't know they were a fear, if it's something that came unexpected, we might not have even realized that was a fear. And the resilience, which would have got you through, the innate resilience, which maybe you were aware of, or maybe you weren't aware of, that was available to you at the time. Either we're aware of that, or we're not aware of that. You know, and I think that sometimes these big experiences are what point us in the direction of seeing the truth of who we all are and what's really going on. That's back to that sort of quote about, wow, you know, the gift of experience, right? If the only thing we were not afraid of was our own experience, that alone would change the world. It's so nice to hear you, and you know, you speak so nicely. So it's just a pleasure to
Thank you. It's been a Pleasure to
I
talk
just
about it.
there was just something that also occurred to me in all of that, which was the kind of depth of, you kind of called it, and when you were kind of the map of consciousness kind of thing,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
felt like this kind of whirlwind. You can't hear me, did you say?
Yeah.
Sorry. And I was just thinking that when you said sort of you'd hit this rock bottom, then what I've really experienced in you, even just in this time together, is how there's this kind of like, because you went to that level, there's now this love of life available to you at the other level. So the kind of, because you've experienced that, you can now experience this, and they're both sitting there side by side, and so that the essence of you sort of feels really summarized in that. I've experienced this kind of deep loss, but look, I'm living life here. And so I just wanted to thank you for that, because that's what I really, it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. That's kind of the message I want to get across as well, is that everything passes, and what doesn't kill us helps us grow.
Make
Yeah.
us stronger and all
Yeah.
that jazz. Hey, so you're embracing life.
Yep.
Liz Nagle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And here I am.
And what are you up to today? How long ago was it that Brendan passed? How many years ago?
8 years ago.
8 years.
Well, 8.5 nearly. Yeah.
And what? So you're in Spain now, and you're living out in that lovely village in your beautiful home. And what are you doing these days? What are you?
Well, I've been a natural health practitioner for years, but it's just evolving and evolving. And so now I call myself an energy alchemist. It's a fancy name. Well, it's not. It's actually what we do. We all do it all the time. But I guess I try to help people to alchemize their stuck positions by changing their thinking and changing their perspective, and understanding that they're not a victim, that they do have full creative control of their reality, the reality that they call life. And I just love helping people to see that, and helping people through difficulties, to have a more potential in their life. So that's what I do now, mostly online, but I use the diet, herbs, whatever I used to use, I use still if it's required. But mostly it's coaching and talking and mentoring. Same as you girls.
Lovely, Liz. Thank you so much for sharing your stories, and we'll light Jackie lit her candle at the beginning of our talk, and we'll offer up our thoughts and prayers and our wishes for you and for Brendan and for anybody who's listening, who's been touched by this story today. We love hearing from everybody. If this story has touched you and you wish to share, you'd love to share your story, then please do get in contact with Jackie or myself at Lost for Words, because I think these stories really help people to relate.
Thank you, Liz.
Yeah.
Thank you, girls.
Yeah, thank you. Love
pleasure.
Everybody. Have a beautiful afternoon, or morning or evening, or wherever you are in the world. Lots of love. Bye-bye.
Bye.